Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome back to yet another building episode on the High Spirits series. I know, I've been keeping up the Monday, Friday thing for 2 whole weeks now. Let's go. Just to reflect on the past 3 episodes, I'm really happy with the direction this level is taken. As far as I'm concerned, the first 2 parts of this level are completely done, except the transition into this ship part, since it's so bare. But yeah, this episode I want to make some stuff in this cube section slash UFO slash robot at the end here. I want to merge these into one part. First off, I want to make some base blocks for this section, just using the exact same values as the ground spikes that we made in the last episode. There's a pulse out, then this stays as black for the whole part. I'll make some different style of pulses, but this is ideal for what I want. They're kind of crooked on the edges at times, but I like the way it looks. Kind of reminds me of a couple of cliffs. You'll also see that I have covered the spaces around the gradient blocks with some black objects. I don't want any of these objects being cut off by the gradient not reaching that area of the screen. To give an example, when I stop right now, it's all good on this part of the screen, but when you look elsewhere, you can see that blocks too far under get cut off. But what you can see is that everything is shrouded apart from the top blocks, which I think makes for a really nice aesthetic. I think thematically it makes a lot of sense. It's like you're gradually gaining your sight back after getting out of the cave. So I'm going to have a primary design which covers all of these spaces on editor layer 0, and then I'm going to have secondary designs which cover the other blocks that are going behind. Big decision right now. I have put the spikes on the base layer, and we can now go ahead and select all of the gameplay blocks and make them invisible. Boom! Now this whole part has the same aesthetic as the previous slopes in the ship section. This has to change, but it looks cool for now. So exiting the ship transition, I have made the grey a little bit darker, and I want to pulse that colour up on the beats just so you get that white back into the level. You might have noticed that this colour trigger coming out of the ship section was on a longer fade time. I think it was on 10 seconds or something. I was experimenting with a gradual change in shade with these blocks, but I decided that I want them to pulse, and when it got to this point, the grey was so similar to the white that the pulse was barely noticeable, so I had to change it back to just a regular snapping fade time like 0.05. As the level goes into 2 times speed, I also want to change the opacity of the blending screen slowly up to a 0.65 or maybe just a 0.6, somewhere around this range, to then get faded back down to a 0.5 as it starts off in this part with this trigger. I just kind of want to embrace the speed, make something out of it. There we go. That looks very ominous going through there, doesn't it? To kind of link one part to another, I want to use these kind of spikes on the tops of these blocks to make it look a bit like icicles. Oh. Well, here comes our first problem. In my outrage of ground spikes not working, I have resorted to fake spikes because they're so much cooler. And what's nice about these is the fact that they have different opacities in them. See, this part of the spike is brighter than the bottom edge, and I think the shape of the spike works really well with the way that my blocks are structured. With these structures towards the end, there isn't really a good place to put them, so I've doubled them up like that, and I think it adds a little bit of variation. I've tried out some invisible spikes overlaying on top, which is pretty interesting actually. So right now you'll see that I've underlaid some invisible blocks that go underneath the cracks that I made earlier, these kind of sloped things. I think it looks pretty decent in game, although it shouldn't be the only thing there. I think it's quite nicely filling up the space for now, giving me a good idea of what it could look like. I'm using 1 time scale objects for the smaller pillars and then the 2 times for underneath. I think I'm a genius, because whenever the invisible objects are not on full opacity, when they're not in their prime, they're getting colorized by the blue blending screen. I love it. These objects were floating, but now they are attached to the structures just using some of the invisible blocks like so. I'm also scattering some of these saws at scales 1 and 0.75. Here we have all of the saws that I have just placed. They are custom rotated to only rotate 30 degrees while they're on screen. I think it looks really awesome. You do that just by clicking on it, going in the edit special, and selecting 30 degrees on the custom right there. At the moment, everything in this level is on don't fade and don't enter. However, I want to test just with these invisible objects that are on editor layer 1 what it would look like if I took off these values. Now obviously I'm going to try a block transition. I'm not just going to have it on the regular. I'm going to use this one. It's going to make the invisible blocks kind of flip onto the screen very subtly. Now I don't know if there's much difference because by the time they reach the end of the screen they're barely visible, but if you look you can see them kind of shifting on and off. And I'm going to be using select filter to select all of the spikes and the saws to also remove these values just to see how it looks as a whole. Now I think it's very subtle, but it does make a difference because nothing really moves in this section. I could have some moving objects like some of these slopes and stuff, but I think this might actually suffice, and I think it would ruin the invisibility aspect of it if I moved some stuff. Now obviously some of the gameplay and the blocks are obscured with this overlay already, so I don't want to make things too complicated. There's a new trigger that is aligned with its duration line to this yellow pad. It's going at 0.8 opacity for 3 seconds with the blending screen. So the level should get a lot more blue before you get into the wave, and that's going to set me up in the next episode with a nice transition to work from. We'll just see it fading on right about now. You see it's getting incredibly blue, and then you pop right there. In fact, I could move this 2 spaces to the left to make room for another alpha trigger that fades on for about 0.5 to full. Maybe just one more. Then this can gradually fade back off once you get into the wave for about 2.5 seconds to a 0.5 again. So here we go. It's going to fade on now. Then it should go very blue in this transition like that. There we go. Perfect. It kind of fits in with the sparkle sound in the song too. I might add some glow that moves up there as well. These objects are kind of strange. I don't know what they're supposed to be, but they're going to fit in quite nicely with the icy and invisible thing since they're going to be shrouded around the orbs and stuff. I think it fits in pretty well, and their rotation should probably be matched with the saws, if not reversed. For example, if I change this to -30 instead of 30. There we go. They look a lot smoother now, and you'll have noticed that I haven't put them on all of the portals. For example, this mini portal and this gravity portal, because since there's a circle left in the middle, whenever there's not an orb or something inside, like a speed portal, that's not a speed portal. That's a speed portal, you see? It just leaves like a big open awkward space, which is why I'm placing hexagons with copied values of the swirly things inside instead. And that also brings a little bit of variation to the decoration and adds a couple of pulsing objects to the part. Something I haven't really done yet, but it's quite important because the song does change here. I don't really know why, but this kind of circle decoration at the top and bottom of portals and orbs and stuff is always my go-to. It looks good enough in normal mode. I like how it mixes the decoration up a little bit, honestly. I don't know, it's just weird that I always use these and it always seems to work. Beneath some of the saws, I have included some spiky decoration that's low opacity, just kind of shrinks into the background. It's not very noticeable, but it does fill in the space. So I'm listening to the song in this part, and there's a noise in the background that's going. I think I could maybe run a beam of glow in the background like this. On group 63, just the next free thing. We're going to layer it as far back as possible on don't fade and don't enter. And I want to make it so that whenever it gets past, so group 63, it's going to fade in for 0.2 and fade out for 1. Just to a nice light blue. We need to make sure that this is on black blending first. Alright, so I'm glad I've tested that before I have went with it, because that blue is way too bright. The solution is group 15, which is half opacity, as I've used quite a lot this episode. And there you go, there's just a little beam that's kind of lighting up the way, similarly to how I made these little glow pieces dance around, if I can find them. One of these, when I had a pulse trigger attached to it, just build helper it all over the place. It's just a very simple version of that, which very subtly ties into the background. And I'm very glad I've figured this out, because I was looking for a way to incorporate different shades of blue into this part. And also, I give you full permission to remind me that I've done this in the previous part as well as this, when I start whining about how many groups I have used already in the following episodes. I'm sure that's going to be a thing. So here are the beams that light up as we pass them. They're not going with the music as I had planned and hoped, but they do actually fill up the space pretty well, and I'm impressed with that. Okay, so I've counted the notes that are repeated in the background, and I figured out that there's 8 different notes, which means that if I was to do a loop of some sort of pulse or alpha trigger effect, that I would need 8 different groups and objects to be repeated. I've looked in the pulsing tab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go, I can just rotate through those pulsing objects to those little noises in the song, you know? So, same as before, black blending, half opacity, B4
copy the values, but then they all need a next for a group. So 91, this love heart can be 92, and so on, and so forth. I've stopped the music so that this green line shows exactly where the next loop of pulse triggers needs to start. Before I do that, I'm going to select them all and edit the hold time. This is also going to be 0.1, just so each pulse carries on to the next, so it doesn't pulse and then the next one pulses. I want it to fade smoothly between them, as you can see down there. So now I need to set this pulse trigger as the group parent, select the rest of them, and scale them down to the point where I can now smoothly add the next loop of pulse triggers right where this green line is, and the loop will carry on, as you can see down there. Boom! I think I've banged it first try. So what group parent does, instead of working out the center of a group of objects like this and scaling around the middle, it then takes the object that you select as group parent as the center, so now you see all of this scales down around this point. And now I'm experiencing a weird editor bug where the duration lines are actually going backwards. What is going on? For good measure, I'm going to add another low opacity object into the mix. So group 15 needs to be black blending. It's just going to be a glow piece like that. It's going to have its own group 99. I'm going to copy the 91 pulse, move it up to the sky, and we'll change this to 99. We'll keep it on white, and we're going to make the fade out time 1. So every time the loop starts, there's some glow that appears briefly. It's very barely noticeable, but it does lighten up some of those shapes. As far as I'm concerned, that is the end of this part. I think that's a wrap for this weird mini section. This is probably my favorite part in the level because of how I've used the invisible blocks. And I think I'm biased towards this color of blue. I don't know, I seem to use it in so many of my levels. But yeah, let me know what you think. I tried to use some more classic decoration pieces, like the invisible blocks, kind of make that reference to Supersonic with those kind of invisible saws. Anyway, thank you for watching this Geometry Dash building video. Check the links in the description. You'll find my Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and Discord server. Leave a like and subscribe, and have a good day!